it is my great pleasure to welcome you once again to the GRESFET event, the Greater South Fair for Endogenous Technology, and to this discussion focused on education and skills development. Allow me to briefly introduce you to the distinguished panelists that are joining us at the discussion today. Mr. Oladoyin Odubanjo is the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Academy of Science. A physician by training, Dr. Odubanjo has since worked at the Evidence to Policy Interface for the past 17 years. He is a fellow of the International Science Council and the pioneer chairman of the Africa chapter of the International Network for Government Science Advice, INGSA. Dr. Odubanjo is also a past chairman of the International Network for Governments, past chairman of the Lagos chapter of the Association of Public Health Physicians of Nigeria, and sits on the board of the Conversation Africa and the Leprosy Mission Nigeria. He is the chair-elect of the Conference of Associate Members of the OSC. In his remarks today, Dr. Odubanjo will be addressing education as a pillar of sustainable development, building skills and knowledge for the future. Please let me welcome you to the stage, Dr. Odubanjo. It's my great pleasure also to introduce Dr. Shubhangi Sharma. She'll be representing the Secretary General today with her remarks. She's the Undersecretary General for Systemic and Endogenous Educational Development. Dr. Sharma is an accomplished international development professional with over 30 years of experience. She provides leadership and strategic vision for advancing education equity and inclusion globally. Prior to her current role, she worked in India and across various countries, holding leadership, advisory, and technical assistance roles with national, international, bilateral, UN, and corporate foundations. Her focus has been on policy advocacy, organizational development, capacity building, program management, and partnership development, with a strong emphasis on equity and inclusion. She brings a wealth of experience and strategic insights that have helped shape educational policies and programs to improve access, quality, and relevance of education. In her remarks today, she will be addressing the OSC vision on education and the third way of development. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Shubhangi Sharma. Wonderful. So we are very much looking forward to the conversation today. We have about 40 minutes for our discussion. We're going to keep it very dynamic. We're going to start with some brief opening remarks from both of our panelists. And I know you're going to really enjoy their thoughts. And we also so much look forward to the insights, the comments, and questions from the audience that will conclude our session. So please do take notes, prepare yourself if you would like to join the discussion at the latter part of our panel today. So with that, let me please welcome Dr. Oladoyin Odubanjo to present his remarks on the topic of education and sustainable development.
Hello, okay, good morning, or is it good afternoon now, everyone, and thank you, Isabelle, for the introduction. It's a pleasure and privilege to be with you today and to be at the inaugural GRESFET, which I'd looked forward to seeing. You know, I've been a part of the visioning, hearing about it for a long time, and it's good to see it coming to life eventually. Let me say, I know also that we're now out of time really, and we stand between you and lunch, so we'll have to be much briefer than initially planned. But basically, I think it's been established, you know, for quite a long time that education is a pillar of development. I think that's quite clear. The issues we really need to start thinking about more than ever, I believe in going back to basic principles, is to question what exactly do we mean by education? You know, what does education really mean? And there are some definitions that I looked up. One talks about the transmission of knowledge, skills, and character traits in various forms. I found that interesting. You know, so we know of knowledge, skills, but character, you know, as well. One talks about the wise, hopeful, and respectful cultivation of learning and change. So I think at the end of the day, you are looking at things that are way beyond the formal education system. And that begins to raise certain question of, you know, what exactly should be the educational system that we're talking about? How should it be, how is it developed? How should it evolve? Where is it going? Because we're also talking about the future. You know, where is it going? How should it be going? How should we work at it? And we're talking about endogenous systems. You know, also what would matter contextually in terms of education for each and every people that you have to deal with. I think critically, education is important, one, for a few reasons. One, being the communication skills, you know, that you need. Everybody needs it, no matter who you are. The ability to read, to write, to speak, to listen appropriately. So I think that's one key issue. Is that communication skill. The second one, of course, we talk about the critical thinking, your ability to apply logic in decision making. Those are the things we're trying to achieve. And of course, the last, which I think is the least, is the ability to meet up with job qualification requirements. You know, so it tends to be important because you need the job. But I think much more important are those other two, because once you can do that, you don't even have to have a job, you can create a job, you know, as it were. So I think the questions we need to be discussing this morning, really, on this panel, what level of education, you know, is required? What level of education generally is required for a people to develop? You know, what should it be? What should be the content of that education? And I think that's where the OSC begins to talk about BIE, which is basic and inclusive education, which has all those pillars, interculturalism, transdisciplinarity, contextuality. You know, those are all important things. So what should be the content? What kind of education should it be? And now, in this day and age, even as we went around looking at the displays, what's striking is the influence of ICT, you know, in everything everybody's trying to do. So the last question in my mind that I think all of us, you know, have to discuss is, what's the place of the internet, you know, in that education? In some places now, the discussion is about the internet as a human right. That is that, how do we ensure every single person has access? At some point, I knew in Nigeria they were talking about increasing the taxes on internet, and I thought that's ridiculous. That's very retrogressive. That's going in the opposite direction of what you want to do, because where you cannot provide formal education for people, you want them to be able to access education for themselves, and one of the easiest ways is by using the ICT provisions or the internet, as it were. So you don't want to tax it and take it out of the reach of people. You want to make it available. I've met people now who even told me, there was somebody I was asking, and I said, look, give me your CV. I know of an opportunity I think you might fit. And she said, no, don't worry about me. And I said, why? She said, I'm doing what I like and I'm making money. And I thought, really? And I said, how did you learn that? She said, the internet. You know, I got everything I'm doing from the internet, and it's okay by me. I don't want the job. She said, you can pass on the opportunity to my friend, but I don't want it. You know, so, and that's the power of the kind of education that can come from that. So I think those are my remarks to start with. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Odubanjo, for your remarks to set us off on this conversation. So let me turn now to Dr. Sharma. Please share with us your initial thoughts on the OSC vision on education, how it relates to the third way of development, and these themes that Dr. Odubanjo has brought forth for us. don't think so.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Isabelle. And good afternoon to everyone who is sitting in this room. First of all, let me tell you that I am very, very pleased to see so many young faces, young people in this gathering, very eagerly and enthusiastically participating in this whole event. The second one is that I am very, very privileged that I have been given the forum to speak in front of this august gathering of young students, young academicians, scholars, and researchers. You know, and you know that I am expected to be focusing about on balanced and inclusive education and third way of development. And before I start talking about it, I wanted to express my understanding to you that I think in the present era and the time when we are talking about education and third way of development, we cannot talk about it without the technology, and not merely technology, but technology which is cognizant of the context of people, which is cognizant of the needs and aspiration of the learners of Greater South, and which is truly inclusive and equitable in its access, in its visibility and its usage. Having said that, I also wanted to make a couple of points around balanced and inclusive education and its relationship with third way of development, and therefore its relationship with the endogenous technology. I think when we are talking about knowledge in the present times, we are not just talking about knowledge in terms of acquisition, right? Acquiring knowledge is not that important, but what is important is to be able to make sure that every one of us is able to continuously learn, right? So this is the first point which I wanted to make. So a technology in that sense is not a luxury, right? It is need of the hour, which is the first thing we need to understand. The second very important aspect is that we are living perpetually, we're living in a world and we are perpetually faced with a situation where there is an inflow of, lot of information in the name of knowledge. And in order to be able to differentiate between what is noise, what is just information, what is education, what is knowledge, we need to fully understand this whole technological world, and within that where we find ourselves as the country of Greater South. And I cannot tell you that when we talk about endogenous technology, we must and we have to speak about balanced and inclusive education. Some of you, many of you, I believe, have heard about OSC and have heard about the very first and key mandate of OSC, which is balanced and inclusive education, right? However, if I may in my words describe to you, I mean, OSC is not talking about any kind of education. Our vision for education, educational transformation, which is also systemic in nature in Greater South, is the vision, which is a vision of education being balanced and inclusive. I cannot talk about balanced and inclusive education if I don't talk to you about its 4 pillars quickly, Dr. Isabelle. I know we would want to engage in discussion but there are many people who have come here for the first time. There are 4 strong pillars which embody the spirit of BIE, and I think we need to know it. And when I explain briefly those 4 pillars to you, you will be able to understand how technology is so much important in order to make this vision possible across the countries of Greater South. The first very important pillar is contextuality. What contextuality speaks about, and our Secretary General also spoke about it in the morning, it's about an education which is as per the context, needs, aspirations, challenges, and issues which are faced by the people of Greater South, right? And I'm quickly telling you, it is more profound than that. What does transdisciplinarity mean? Transdisciplinarity means knowledge and education which goes far and beyond academic knowledge, which takes account of the knowledge which is outside the so-called realm of academics, which is indigenous, which is also perpetually growing and evolving itself. Intraculturalism, you know, an education which really prepared the learner to be able to introspect and deeply reflect on one's own culture, so that in the process of reflection we are able to understand our connectedness with other cultures, and we could be indebted, rather than having this whole feeling of superiority complex about own very culture. We are able to understand as individuals that my culture is not no culture is monoculture. My culture is also not a monoculture. It has evolved over a period of time. It has a lot of cultures within a culture which I understand is my culture. And it has taken so much from other cultures that have contributed in its growth, in its movement, and its being alive. And the fourth, again, important pillar, dialecticism, which talks about education where students are not just receiver of knowledge, which is given to them by the teacher, but they are the protagonists of their learning. They are owners of their learning. They are the one who are actually the deeply involved agents in the process of knowledge exchange. Now, if we talk about these four pillars, we need to understand where the technology comes here. Inclusion is a very important aspect of the whole idea and vision of balanced and inclusive education. And inclusion doesn't only mean access. Inclusion in OSC parlance mean I, as a learner, should be able to see myself in the process of learning. I should be able to see my culture, my context, my history, my life, my community, my society, my challenges. And for that kind of education to happen, we need, and that education which leads to third way of development, which is not a way of development, but which is a way of development which promotes multiple ways of development based on endogenous capacities and endogenous resources. So look at this whole idea of third way of development and based on certain core common principles. When we talk about balanced and inclusive education, and when we talk about this third way of development, which I very briefly described to you, I think we have to understand that technology is going to play a huge role in terms of ensuring the access of everybody to the process of education, and also making sure that nobody is left behind because education is not able to reach out to that person. And as our Secretary General also spoke in the morning, this imported technology, which proprietary-based technological solution, which doesn't have the possibility to tailor education to the needs, to the priority and the context of individuals, is not really education. And if we want to actually go forward towards that whole vision of balanced and inclusive education and the idea of third way of development, endogenous technology is the answer. Sorry for a little long reply, but I have to make my organization's vision on BIE, which is collectively formed by all of us, to the people who may not know about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sharma. That was an amazingly succinct but very rich and deep explanation of balanced and inclusive education, third way of development, connecting it also with the endogenous technologies that we see in the hall, and we see the thinkers and the innovators behind it here in our audience. And this is very very wonderful foundation for our conversation. And as I was preparing for this talk, I was thinking through also what are the connections between these different themes, and how do we connect how do we connect endogenous technology, for example, to these 4 pillars? And I think, in fact, with our innovators here in the room, I think some of them are at the forefront of what balanced and inclusive education, what we hope the fruits of it would be, because they are the protagonists. They are the ones. They have followed their own curiosity. They have understood their own culture, the own needs of their society, and they have decided to take an action based on that. So they're addressing the dialecticism, and they are addressing in some way the interculturalism too, because they are also digging into their own context and their own spaces to bring that out, and perhaps even engaging with innovations and things from other spaces that can contribute also to their own thinking. And they may be engaging with the transdisciplinarity as well, across different spaces. It was exciting to see, and I can't wait to see more, but many of them also engaging in the education spaces, which is very exciting to go and again work on ways to share knowledge and share access, for example. And then the contextuality, of course, they're very much rooted in that. So I think it's exciting to see how these threads are coming together in the space, and to be part of an event where we are learning, right? Where we say we want to keep learning and sharing our knowledge as part of our lifelong activities. And so thank you so much for both of these interventions. Dr. Odubanjo as well for taking us back to the basics. What is education? What should we be learning? And I think this is this idea of the balanced and inclusive education is a way of us thinking through what is really the important things, where we can make it inclusive also, because we're actually meeting students where they are, both in terms of their context, their interests, the passions that they're exploring on the internet that are driving them even into new domains of knowledge. And so with that, maybe I can pose a question also. Dr. Odubanjo, I know you had brought the theme of education for sustainable development, education for the future. And I'm wondering if you could take us through how you see that happening at different levels of the education systems, from the basic to the higher education kind of context. Where do you see that playing out?
Well, thanks, Isabelle. Actually, as you spoke, and it's good you're talking about going to the future. My mind was actually going backwards, and I was thinking we can't really go to the future without going further back first, finding out who we are, what we are, and what we knew. And I have that conversation sometimes with people, and I say, look, I'm a physician, but I'm beginning to value much more than ever the place of history, in education. The fact that we must know what was, and I think in most cases we're trying to get into that future without knowing enough of that past. So there are many things. For instance, if I take my field of medicine, most people will think vaccination is an invention of the West, but it's not. It's actually an invention from the Greater South, which was taken, commercialized, and what have you, by the West. If we look at carbon dating, which is used in archaeology, to tell how old this artifact is and all that, the foundation for that is found in Senegal. I was told on a visit there and shown all of the archaeological things and historical things, that this is the basis of it. This is the foundation of it. Now, I see that if we're looking at that future, we need to now first look backwards and start asking certain questions again. How was this being done? How was that being practiced? How come, for instance, in medicine, now we're all screaming, we're looking for solutions to malaria, but that's an age-old disease, which was successfully also managed for many years by people. So what were they using? What were they doing? And those are questions I think they're critical to going forward. So even as you look on the, whether you're talking elementary level, secondary level of education, tertiary level of education, I think the study of history itself and history specific to certain domains is important. I'm happy to be here, be in the Science Museum in Ethiopia, because we are putting up a science museum, which we hope to commission in January in Nigeria by the Nigerian Academy of Science. So I'm trying to see everything I can see, learn everything I can learn. And one of the things I've been telling the curator and all the team working with me is we must have a strong endogenous knowledge presence. You know, we must feature things. Different parts, Nigeria is a big place. And even if you take architecture, you know, the architectural designs of buildings back in the days differs according to the part of Nigeria. And there's a reason behind it. There's a thinking behind it. There's some scientific thinking that the people had that made them do that. So the northern part, they would build houses in circles. They use thatches for roofs and all that. And it's been found historically that that is cooler. That's the hotter part of the country, but they were able to deal with that problem by building in a particular way and using particular materials. And I said, those are things we must feature so that the modern day architect must start from there to begin to reinvent and think about the future. You know, where are we going? We used a lot of mud and all that to build. Why? It's also cooler. You know, but colonialism came, it was actually banned and made illegal to build with that, and we're pushed towards cement. And cement is very expensive now. And I said, so why have we not gone back to look at those things and see how we could use that to begin to build again? It's probably more affordable. It gives us all the things we want. We have cooler houses and all of that. Why don't we have that? So I hope I'm answering your question somewhat, you know, which is that for all levels of education, and even as you specialize going upwards, you still need to now start specializing by looking at specific areas to say we're training architects, but we must start by training them on what architecture was in that environment and why it was so. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Odubanjo. You definitely are connecting these themes because the sustainability is there, right? Because these practices, these innovations, yep, these architectural innovations were sustainable. Absolutely. And they also address the needs, both in terms of the ecosystem, yep, the weather, the culture, absolutely, and all of the aspects. They were appropriate for that context. And I love that you're looking to showcase those in the museum, right, in Nigeria, in the Science Museum that you'll be opening soon, and maybe we can come and visit you there. I hope
we'll look forward
for future for our future GRESFET, etc. Yeah. So wonderful. So Dr.
Maybe we'll host GRESFET there.
I know, right? If I was the decision maker, right? Which right, we'll suggest. So on your side, Dr. Sharma, would you like to respond to some of the themes that Dr. Odubanjo was bringing forward?
I mean, there is nothing which I would want to respond to, but I would want to echo what he has said, because personally, as a person who is working in the space of education, I firmly believe that there is no present, secure present, without understanding the past, and there is no future without knowing and learning from your past, right? So our present and future both are very much dependent on our past, and therefore it is vital that we spend enough time, energy, money, resources, whatever it requires to make ourselves understand and learn what our past was. For instance, you know, we all of us, pretty recently, COP29 has ended. And all of us are pretty much despaired and absolutely, sort of devastated by the outcomes of COP29. I mean, the way we wanted it to progress, it could not progress in that manner. Climate change is becoming a reality, melting of ice, high temperature, flooding across the globe. We are witnessing weather which is really sort of enough for us to be very, very scared about. But are we understanding enough from how our people, indigenous people, how our ancestors, how our communities and societies used to make sure that water is preserved and reservoirs are made in a manner in which water is available for the entire duration of the year? Do we know what the way they used to make their houses? And we know that even now across many countries of the world, the way the houses are made, they are resistant enough to sort of secure the lives. So what I feel is that we as generation of present group of learners need to be really mindful of the fact that if we didn't invest enough time, energy, and resources in understanding and learning and educating ourselves from our past, our future is very, very insecure. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. Yeah, I think it's a very important point, and I think it's a good opportunity for us to once again, as our Secretary General mentioned, for us to encourage our participants here to learn from one another, to share their knowledge, to share their history, to share the preoccupations that they have, and to think about how can we innovate, drawing from our history, and also looking towards our future. So this is great. I would ask you also, Dr. Sharma, I'm curious about, with the OSC program, working towards, as you said, not just any kind of education, but the balanced and inclusive education, and also working on TVET, so the training and vocational, technical and vocational education and training. Can you help us understand also how we can connect these ideas of BIE into the technical and vocational spaces that can also be informed by our histories of innovation and our histories of practice, professional and hands-on practices across the sectors that will bring us to a more sustainable development in the future?
Right. So I can actually, if it hadn't been a conference on a fair on endogenous technology, I would have perhaps answered this question in a little different manner. But I think we are speaking about this whole issue in the context of endogenous technologies, and I cannot tell you that in the space when we are talking about modern day TVET, right? What we are talking about, we are also talking about technical and vocational education responding to and being mindful of the challenges or the not just the challenges, but the requirement of the skills which are required in a particular context, in a particular country, right? At a particular time, not only for the present, but also for the future. And in that aspect, I actually see a lot of scope for endogenous technology, not only in terms of making sure, because if I may tell you with my experience of working across various countries on TVET, and perhaps all of us know that at this point in time, the entire world is talking about green TVET, right? How we are going to be able to ensure our waste management, how we are going to make sure that the TVET skills are also responding to this growing phenomenon of climate change, to prepare people for climate adaptation and climate mitigation, right? So I believe that we need to be seeing more in technology by way of developing endogenous, contextually relevant, with an ability to be tailored, that kind of technology to impart the technical and vocational education which we are talking about. This is one aspect. Another aspect of TVET, which to my mind is very, very crucial, is this entire issue of access to TVET education. If you see, I wouldn't give you data, but all of us know that in Greater South, there are very deep-rooted social and gendered perception around technical and vocational education. Those who are generally admitted to TVET schools and colleges, they are the persons who perhaps couldn't get through medicine or couldn't become engineer or couldn't become anything else, and therefore the last resort for them is TVET. And I think that should not be the case. In order to prepare for the future, we need people who are actually sort of equipped with such skills and technology, having a mastery over technology is one of the key requirements for future. So we need to see the entire, and balanced and inclusive education talks about inclusive TVET as well. It talks about balanced TVET and how we can make TVET balanced and inclusive. We need to leverage the merit and the scope of endogenous technologies to be able to see that our TVET sector is not only mindful of the present and future requirements, but it is also inclusive in the sense that it is responding to the contextual requirement of our countries.
So if I may add on.
Please, Dr. Odubanjo.
Yeah, so if I may add on to that, what I hear Dr. Shubhangi talking about is that we can't just move curriculums. So we can't say, oh, I like your technical, your TVET, and then I just take your curriculum and transfer it and I open my own TVET school, and all that. We have to look at what exactly are the needs where I am, which are likely to be very different in many cases, and then I have to design, what works for that place. What exactly do people need to know? What skills do they really need to develop that is appropriate for where we are and will solve the problems of where we are? So everyone must work looking at that local applicability, of what we're doing. The second bit of it reminded me, the access one, and the fact that people, it shouldn't be something that we do because there's no option. TVET shouldn't be. It should be responding to needs. And I remember the conversation I had with the Commissioner for Works and Housing in Lagos State some years ago. We were sitting at a dinner and we're talking. And the lady said to me, if you give me $1 billion, because we have a huge housing deficit. And she said, if you give me, $10 billion, and said, provide me X number of houses now. She said, I can't do it. And I said, why? She said, because we can't find the people with the skills. She said, so money is not the answer to the problem. She said, the issue is that we will still not be able to find enough people with the skills that we need to do the different parts of that housing project, whether plumbing, whether electrical works. He said, we just don't have enough people. So that the issue of access is very key, it's very important. And that's what that reminds me of. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Odubanjo. So with that, I think we shall transition to questions and comments from the audience to give a chance for the participation. I hope that we can circulate a mic. If there's someone that can help facilitate that, it would be greatly appreciated. If you have a question, just feel free to raise your hand and we'll take your question. If you have a comment, if you want to participate in the discussion, share your thoughts, it's also welcome. So we have about, say, 10, 15 minutes, so we can take a few questions, comments.
We don't. I think we scared them enough.
We have two over here. So in the front. Okay, maybe we can start with our guest here in the front, please.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. And I'm grateful that we had such a wonderful, impressive discussions on education. So I just would like to raise a few, well, actually one question and a kind of perspective that I would like to hear from, especially from the Under-Secretary General of OSC regarding the PID. Yes, the balanced and inclusive education is key, and we were able to also hear from you of the 4 pillars. And I was a little bit curious how, particularly of the practical and hands-on experiential learning for our youth, especially in the Greater South, because practical education actually demands facilities, physical facilities in particular. I know virtual facilities could also facilitate education, but they are not as impactful as the practical hands-on experience we can have in physical facilities. So from this perspective, I just would like to hear from OSC how the strategy is in terms of availing practical learning platforms for the youth. And I know, by the way, I'm Semeno from, well, I have two hats, but now I represent STEM Power, which is an organization, an international organization, working on STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education. In Ethiopia, we started in Ethiopia like 15 years back, and now we are expanding our experience to other sub-Saharan African countries, and we were able to establish more than 130 STEM centers across 33 African countries. And right today, I have a team in Namibia to establish 2 STEM centers. So, I mean, in such endeavors of expanding STEM education in the Greater South, because STEM education it's an approach. It's not just a subject matter mastering. It's an approach of integrating different disciplines, multidisciplinarity, having mathematics in the center, and we link it with practical challenges among the society so that we can have technical interventions or technological solutions for those identified local problems. So in that case, how is the strategy from OSC side to partner and leverage such initiatives and partnership with such kind of, I'm just referring STEM Power, but I'm sure there are initiatives here and there. So how are you going to play our role in terms of bringing those initiatives in one platform so that we can impact more lives in the Greater South? Thank you.
Dr. Sharma. Should we take a couple questions first? Okay, very good. I saw some hands here. Any ladies with a question? If you're thinking about asking a question and you're not sure you should, please do.
Thank you so much, the distinguished panelists and also the moderator. My name is Isabelle. I'm from ET5AM Club. So my question is about inclusivity once again. I want to second the first Dr. Semeno from STEM Power. So my question is, what's the view or what's the strategy towards inclusivity in terms of persons with disabilities? Because in education, as you know, more than 5% those persons with disability accumulate about 5% of the population. So it's a significant number. So is there a way or a strategy that's also going to benefit those persons with disabilities? Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question. Yes, we have another hand behind.
Thank you very much. My name is Asnaga from the Ministry of Innovation. I'm working with International Relations and Cooperation Office through the Ministry. I have no question, but I have some kind of recommendation or opinion regarding to this session. First, I say that welcome to our city, Addis Ababa, as the center of African Union. So I said welcome to Addis for all to invite such kind of session. Then I will forward my opinion. So in Africa and the South-South cooperation has to encourage to demonstrate the young talent academy as an African and the South-South cooperation. The second one, we have to expand Center of Excellence Startup Center as our corner of through South-South cooperation. And the third one, we have to foster research and development in South-South cooperation. And finally, we have to passion for Center of Excellency, both innovation and the scientific activity in our arena, such African and other countries. And also, I have forward, we have to support financially those who are young talents and researchers in South-South cooperation. And finally, I will recommend that if you are coming to our office through the ministry, we shall do cooperation, integration, and partnerships through science, technology, and other activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Appreciate that. Okay. Okay, I see one hand, two more hands. I'm not sure if we will have time. Shall we go ahead and address the questions that were raised? I think, Dr. Sharma, I think many of the questions and comments are addressed to the OSC.
So I don't know whether you will be fully satisfied with my answer, but let me answer. First, let me tell you that I could not agree with you more on this whole aspect of experiential learning. And I think the whole, if you heard me, that whole idea of balanced and inclusive education is very much in favor of and pro-experiential learning. So you know, just take if I take one sort of pillar of balanced and inclusive education, which is contextuality, right? In order for the learners to be able to understand a particular topic or a subject well, you need to bring in the context of the learner in the classroom, in the four walls of the classroom. And what does it mean? Not only that you are bringing that context in the classroom, but if suppose there is an issue of water scarcity which is being taught in the classroom, you need to sort of rely on project work. So BIE approach talks a lot about the project-based learning. It talks very much about learning outside the four walls of schools, so-called educational center. It also talks about bringing in the community and the issues of the community within the classroom. So I think if first way out in order to ensure experiential learning in our schools and in our educational centers is this. But I also can understand what you were actually trying to say is, especially with respect to nowadays it is STEAM. A has also come, it is arts, right? Science, technology, but arts is also very much a part of it. You're very right that if we see across the countries of Greater South, we see crunch of resources, right? There are not enough laboratories, there are not enough experimental opportunities for the students to be able to fully grasp and learn subjects like science and engineering and such technical subjects. And for that, resources need to be perhaps made available. But my moot point is that that even if the state-of-the-art laboratories are not available, there is enough there and out in the communities using which a lot of concepts related to because what is science? Science is about inquiry, and inquiry can best happen in the community, with the community. So I think we need to see on both these aspects, and in terms of partnership with institutions, I mean, as a collective organization of countries of Greater South, OSC is very willing to collaborate with any such entity which believes in the approach of balanced and inclusive education is ready to accompany us to realize this particular vision of balanced and inclusive education. With respect to briefly answer the issue of disability within inclusion, if I may tell you, in a large earlier part of my life, I worked directly with the schools, with the educators, with the children. And what I understood, and this is my personal perspective, that inclusion of persons with disability, and I would call them persons with different kind of abilities, not disabilities, is just not a question of infrastructure and facilities. Of course, you need to make your schools more inclusive by having ramps, by having such infrastructure and facilities which will make them feel welcome in the school systems. But more and beyond that, I think here also I would go back to the approach of balanced and inclusive education, and I would again go back to my statement where I said that inclusion is not just about access. Inclusion is also about, as a learner, I must be able to see myself in the processes which are happening in the schools, and I should also be able to see the reflection of my language, my culture, my history, my life, my challenges, my issues in the school system. So this is the second very, very important requirement. And the third requirement, of course, is to be able to understand, to be able to recognize the very specific needs of persons with different abilities. When these three aspects are ensured, in the framework of balanced and inclusive education, only then the inclusion is possible, and it is not possible just about being focused on bringing more children with disability to school where they still feel alienated, where they still feel isolated, and where they still feel that they are not part of the system.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sharma. Dr. Odubanjo, would you like to add your thoughts?
Those were primarily for her, but as she spoke, I felt myself loving Dr. Shubhangi more, because she didn't go the route of we're lost, we don't have, and we should borrow to build facilities and things, and I just thought, wonderful answer, really. So, sir, I think that we have missed opportunities, and I think that's what she's saying. We have missed opportunities. I see sometimes, young people who have developed things. They seem very simple, remote controlled cars, airplanes. But what I'm looking at is that the person who did this had little or no education, And the question I'm asking myself is, how did he conceptualize all of the issues, from design to, the control systems? How come he was able to conceive it? And even the person who went through the formal education hasn't done this, And the missed opportunity is for us to sit down and try to understand where he got his knowledge from, which is what she's saying, that it's available somewhere in that community. He got to start thinking that way from certain things he engaged with, and we need to look at that. There are even those who went through formal education. Recently, we had a set of 3 guys who were in university in Nigeria, and they developed these drones. I don't know what that special capacity of the drones were, but they definitely didn't get it from their school. And the US actually got in touch with them directly. They're working on moving them away. And the question is, okay, from whatever they were taught, how come all the other people couldn't think about this? What got these guys thinking this way? What exactly were they picking up that we therefore can use to teach people? So while the facilities and all that are advantageous, where we don't have them, don't let's throw up our hands in despair and say, we're finished. Let's ask ourselves, what's available still that's made people do the things that they do? In ancient Egypt and all the pyramids we're talking about, they had ways they calculated height and things. So there were things that made people think. I was also thinking about the Nigerian author Chinua Achebe and his book he wrote, is it in 1958, Things Fall Apart. And in there, basically, he referenced climate change before there was COP anything, and talked about the coping mechanisms, without saying he's talking about climate change, but he was talking about the climate change issues and the coping mechanisms of the people. So I think there are missed opportunities, and I think something happened to all of us, me inclusive, that got us into this formal system and almost gets us stuck within the formal education system that we get trapped within, but we need to be able to break out of that, take the advantage of that system, but also now go within the community and take what is in there and improve on what we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Odubanjo, Dr. Sharma. So personally, I found this quite inspirational, and in fact, I think these are perspectives that we need to remind ourselves. We need to keep looking at the opportunities, the possibilities that we have so close at hand if we can really galvanize the knowledge we have, the resources, the wisdom of our environments and our communities. And it's very exciting to have an opportunity to learn from all of our participants these next 2 days, as well as amazing experts and leaders and innovators in their own fields as well, such as yourself, Dr. Odubanjo, Dr. Sharma. And thank you so much for sharing your time with us and your insights. I would take a very brief moment to respond to the last comment related to South-South cooperation on research, on innovation, and even creating spaces for this to take place, if I'm not mistaken. And I would look forward, I hope you have a chance to talk to some of the OSC colleagues that are present here the next 2 days. We're working in some of those areas. As His Excellency, the Secretary General mentioned, we have just had the approval from our member states on our common program for the next 2 years, and these are some of the core things there. And so we really look forward to partners and working together on creating opportunities for more South-South cooperation on these areas. And GRESFET is one. Yes, Dr. Sharma.
Point I wanted to add, because I think it's an appropriate forum. I think we also need to learn a lot from each other, right? This whole fair which has been put together, it gives us so much of an opportunity. If I am from India and I'm faced with a particular problem with respect to education or water, preservation or cleanliness, etc., I can actually reach out to my fellow country. The problem perhaps has been with us as countries of Greater South, that we have always looked outwards. And looking outward is not a problem at all. From wherever we can get good learning and good solutions, we should always be adaptive to that rather than just taking it and trying to implement it. But there is so much digging out our endogenous capacities, digging out our endogenous resources, and finally, because somewhere my colleague from Thai, Dr. Shrumate, is sitting, digging out our endogenous technologies to derive solutions for ourselves, be it around education or health or research or agriculture, is the answer.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. I couldn't have said it better myself. So let's please end on this note. We hope that you enjoy your lunch. Thank you for attending the session, and please enjoy the rest of the GRESFET. Have a good day.